People have wanted to know, who does Lamar Jackson prefer for the Ravens coaching search? We might have just gotten an answer.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now the #1 sports podcast network. Appreciate everybody for being here on this Thursday, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day. And thanks so much to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content here on Locked On Ravens. And on today's show, we might have just received some word about Lamar Jackson, a stamp of approval in this Ravens coaching search. We'll talk about that in the first part of the show. In the second part of the show, the Ravens might have potentially sent a message here with their head coaching search in terms of the timeline that they could be on and guys that they are looking at. And finally, we'll talk about Baltimore timelines in the final part of the show and other Ravens updates. I want to tell everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you, sponsored by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Here with me on this Thursday, it is Sam Njoku from Ravens Talk Podcast and the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. We just had the Locked On Ravens Squad Show last night. Sam is back this morning to dive into all this Ravens talk. And Sam, just feels like there's so many storylines, so many headlines. Things are picking up, it feels like, in this Ravens coaching search for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, when the Ravens lost to the Steelers, I thought, okay, well, time to slow down. Off season's here, time to take it easy. Nope, it's been full speed ahead, maybe even more so than during the regular season. That's what happens when you look for a new coach. Plenty of storylines to discuss here.
Plenty. Nothing is slowing down here, and it probably won't, honestly. This is going to be a busy offseason, but the first order of business, obviously, is getting this new head coach in the building. I also wouldn't mind the Lamar Jackson extension, but I think the head coaching search is what is on everybody's mind right now. And Diana Russini, insider for The Athletic, she went on The Herd and talked a lot about a lot of different openings, because obviously it's not just Baltimore that's going through this. Over a quarter of the league didn't have head coaches before this whole thing, and guys are starting to fly off the board. But she revealed what she heard about the Ravens situation, and particularly about Lamar Jackson and the process that he is going through with this organization. And she said, quote, "I know for a fact that Lamar Jackson and those receivers would like Kliff Kingsbury to run their offense. They've shown support. They've been vocal about it. They've been part of some of these interviews too. Lamar Jackson's part of these. He's zooming in. He's in touch with the decision makers of what he likes, who he's liked." And then she talked a little bit about Anthony Weaver, because that was another conversation before this about Weaver, because he's a very popular candidate. The Ravens obviously have had him in and doing some stuff with him. She said, quote, "Anthony Weaver is going to be in the running for this job. And from what I understand, Kliff Kingsbury would be his OC." So essentially the pairing that I'm getting there is Anthony Weaver at head coach and Kliff Kingsbury is the offensive coordinator. She didn't say anything about Lamar and Anthony Weaver in that connection there. But it's interesting, this report here, that, all right, Lamar Jackson, and I'm assuming guys like Zay Flowers and Rashod Bateman and those receivers, Kliff Kingsbury is a guy that they are putting their stamp of approval on. Does that surprise you, Sam? What are your first thoughts about Kingsbury? Because I know that some people would like this, other people would not like it as much.
Yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by the people that aren't really for this. I get that he didn't have too much success with Kyler Murray, but he was on fire over there in Washington with Jaden Daniels. So I think I understand why the receivers will like it. It definitely isn't the traditional offense that the Ravens ran here. Even then, he does run the football a little bit. They're a lot more spread in their offense, a lot more 11 personnel, meaning you'll have 3 receivers on the football field the majority of the time. There's a lot of RPO involved in Kingsbury's offense as well. So you're going to get a lot of read option, something very similar to what you got in Baltimore. But the difference is you're going to spread the ball out a little bit more. The receivers are going to be more involved in the offense. You're not going to see too much of Pat Ricard on the football field if you got a guy like that leading your offense. So I see the vision from the offensive weapons that the Ravens do possess, including one Lamar Jackson. I think another thing to note of is, Weaver is a candidate. He is a strong possibility to be a head coach. Is he the favorite? Probably not, but he's somebody you want to watch out for because, again, if the offensive players like, Kliff and these other guys do not like having Kingsbury as your OC, then that may be a decision. There may be a factor in them choosing who the head coach would be. So Weaver, you already know that he's on board with having a guy like that as his OC. These other guys may need to be that as well, because the only other really true test of an offensive coordinator here, Joe Brady, maybe, Clint Kubiak is a guy, but he'll be the head coach involved. So not a lot of options for offensive coordinator. This guy's one of them. So you want to be a head coach here, might need to get on board with that guy being your offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, the only other experienced guy I could think of would be Brian Dable, but he's in the running for the Bills head coaching job. And there are also rumblings maybe you could go with Robert Saleh in Tennessee. So like Kingsbury is, because I think we have to just get this out of the way. Mike McDaniel probably not, at all, but is assured he is going to Los Angeles based off of the reports. That was my top option for offensive coordinator. Like I would have loved it if it was like Minter and McDaniel. Weaver and McDaniel would have been weird because it would have flip-flopped the roles.
Yeah.
But I think to me, Kingsbury, it's the air raid style, essentially some version of that, where there are obviously wrinkles in there with Kingsbury's offenses. And just for context on his Washington offenses, in 2024, which was his first season, the NFC Championship year, was 4th in rushing, 13th in passing, was the 5th best scoring offense in the league in terms of points, 7th most yards in the NFL, also 4th in points per drive. It was a good offense. And again, Jaden Daniels had a great rookie season, and Terry McLaurin was great. They had good weapons there. Obviously, it was a much more injury-riddled year for them this season, where they still were able to put together the 5th best rushing offense in yards per attempt and the 14th best passing offense, but they dropped to 22nd in points, 22nd in yards, 20th in points per drive, etc. As offensive coordinator, again, it's not my favorite option, but it's also not, I would not want Dable. Like just personally, to me, I'm just not a big Dable guy. I think that you could do worse than Kingsbury, but I also feel like the younger guys like a Shieldhouse, maybe a Davis Webb, those guys intrigue me, but they're also up for some head coaching opportunities. So would they just return to their teams for a year if they don't get those opportunities? Or would they be willing to maybe make a move to a Ravens or some team like that for a year under a defensive-minded head coach and call those plays for the first time? I think the problem with that, though, is we just saw a first-time play caller on the defensive side of the ball in Zach Orr. My top option still is Clint Kubiak. I think that he would be awesome and open up this offense with Lamar Jackson. It's not like there are a billion offensive coordinator options that you can just throw in here and you feel like, all right, that's good. It feels like it's starting to dwindle a little bit here.
It is, and that is a concern if you're a Ravens fan or even the front office trying to get together this staff. But yeah, he's one of the better options. You mentioned Brian Dable. He's an option. Joe Brady is probably more likely than not, if not, Kingsbury. So I don't know. I think that a lot of Ravens fans are a little, and deservedly so. He didn't do well with Kyler Murray in Arizona, and he kind of fizzled out a little bit in Washington. But if the Ravens players are on board with it, then that is why I am on board with it as well. That's my thought process. Now, could they live to regret the decision? Possibly. But I also think that, the other options are guys who are either limited in their play calling ability or have shown that they're not the greatest when it comes to doing it, especially with somebody, the likelihood of greatness that is Lamar Jackson. So I get it. Again, Mike McDaniel seems like a phenomenal choice as OC. He went to LA. If you're looking for an offensive guy to come in and shake the foundation of this team, then you might want to look at a guy like Clint Kubiak, who has shown that he can do it with a guy like Sam Darnold, let alone with a guy who should be, in all considerations, a 3-time MVP in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm there quite yet with this whole thing. I feel like I'd need to be talked into it. Kingsbury, again, is not my favorite option. Again, I could stomach it a lot more if it's the offensive coordinator, which again, I assume that is what it's going to be. If he was the head coach, I would no, we're not we're not doing that. But oh man, I just feel like with Kingsbury, and again, every candidate has their questions, but I think the concern is that, what if this thing just like flames out after a year, and Kubiak is a guy that could really like build that offense around Lamar. Now, obviously, there are more concerns than just the offense, right? You're going to have to figure out that defense as well. And a guy like Weaver, or, I think Jesse Minter, who we'll get to in just a couple minutes here, like he would be great for this defense as the head coach. But again, it's just about the staff. So, I mean, what is your biggest concern if it were to be Kingsbury with Lamar Jackson? What's kind of your thought process there?
I'm not concerned as much as many. Again, this past year, injury riddled. So I give him some grace, but I want, the best case scenario, and there are some caveats, is that you get an offensive mind like a Clint Kubiak to come in here and change the foundation of this offense. But on the flip side, who's going to be your defense coordinator? Because you need a guy that comes in and fixes defense, because the defense is the reason why the Ravens weren't playing in the postseason this year. I mean, they just gave up 2 big throws to a 50-year-old, darn near 50-year-old quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. So they need to find a way to fix this defense. The amount of people that are going to be suited to come in here and fix this defense are either in line to be head coaches or have already taken jobs somewhere else. Brian Flores was a prime example. He's going to come back in Minnesota because he's likely not going to get a head coaching opportunity. Robert Saleh was another guy. He's now the head coach of Tennessee. And Jesse Minter, a guy who brought in here, could be the guy, but then Jesse Minter's in line to be a head coach. He's not going to want to be a defense coordinator. In fact, he's already a defense coordinator in LA, so he can't, make that lateral move unless you're throwing lots and lots of money in his direction. I don't see it going that way. So it's going to be interesting. Again, Ravens need to find a way to do it. It looks like the path of least resistance to fix this is to have a defensive-minded head coach and an offensive coordinator the Ravens love, the players love, and a guy like Kingsbury.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how we would use a guy like Derrick Henry, especially with his version of, I guess, the air raid type of system. And when just looking over it, something that I've seen just about him when looking at different stuff is that historically his teams kind of flame out, whether it be at the end of a couple of years or even at the end of seasons, and that's concerning at points. He's very creative, sometimes maybe too creative with some of the screenplays that he runs, but. That I don't know. I feel like I'd have to be talked into it. But again, like if this is what Lamar wants, I'm very interested in why. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll round out this conversation as well as look at the Ravens maybe sending a message with their latest head coaching interview. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming up on Locked On Ravens. What if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action. So when momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. Now I can actually take part live in a market powered by people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood, now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission merchant and swap firm. And the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is in full swing, and there's nothing like being at the game, the crowd noise, the energy, and cheering alongside other fans. Watching at home is great, but being in the stadium hits different. The frustrating part has always been getting tickets, waiting in queues, dealing with logins, and watching prices change right at checkout. That's why the Gametime app gives the advantage back to fans. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NFL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. The app is incredibly intuitive. You got browsing, comparing, and buying tickets, all taking just minutes. One of my favorite features is being able to see the view from my seat before buying, so there are no surprises. And the zone deals stood out to me because you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats, and you save even more. Take the guesswork out of buying NFL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today and get back to being there live. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you with Sam and Joku, diving into Ravens football here. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage and content. We have the regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We also have bonus episodes on the weekend when there are headlines. And spoiler, there are a lot of headlines. So we're doing a lot of bonus episodes on the weekend. We also have instant reaction shows after every piece of Ravens breaking news. And after games during the year, we're going to have an instant reaction whenever the Ravens hire their head coach. We also have watch-alongs during the season and the Locked On Ravens Squad show twice a week. Sam and I, as well as for Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail, we bring you that content Mondays and Wednesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. So if you missed our show from last night, be sure you check it out. Also, if you want some extra add-on content, the Everydayer Club, it's live now for Locked On Ravens. You get some extra stuff that I just don't have the time to do on the show anymore with everything going on with all the headlines. So weekly Q&As. We're going to get into draft season soon. You got access to a Discord server, one-on-one text conversations, ad-free episodes, the whole 9 yards. So if you're interested, links in the description below, as well as on the Locked On website. You can go to the Locked On Ravens page and find out more there. Sam, when talking about Lamar and the receivers, why do you think they are interested in Kliff Kingsbury running their group?
I know exactly why. They want to deviate from the run first heavy offensive approach. I mean, that has been the problem that receivers in this offense have had since they've implemented it. They want to be not a pass first team, but at least a balanced team where the receivers aren't just there to block. And so I'm sure the conversation during interviews was, how are you going to get Lamar Jackson be the best version of himself he can be? And I am sure that, guys like Kingsbury told the front office, hey, I want to get this passing attack going. The run game is there, but to be truly successful in this league, especially in scenarios where you need to come from behind, you need to be able to pass the football and do so effectively with exotic passing. So I think the players probably excited for the notion of, okay, 11 personnel more. They were one of the lowest rated 11 personnel teams in the league the last 3 years. You expect with him, it improves a little bit. But you also got to take that with a grain of salt, Diana's report, not to say that she's not on it when it comes to that. But, they could be high on him, but also high on other people. So it's probably not just him that have gotten the attention of these Ravens players. He's probably just the one because at the time of that, sit down, Weaver was the only other coach. So could be that Weaver's interested in working with him and the players are down for it. And it just seems like a match made in heaven. And we'll see if Jesse Minter had another idea or whoever else they bring in the upcoming days. But if not him, then who is the question? And again, we talked about it. The amount of experienced offense coordinators are limited. The Daboll and Joe Brady, I can't think of really any other offensive coordinators that can come in and be that guy that really shake this team and change the way they do business here on offense. So I'm not 100% for it. I think the best bet for Lamar Jackson would be to get an offensive-minded head coach, and those are few and far between right now. There's only 3 that are really in line to be successful, and they're all coaching in the divisional round, the conference round of the postseason. And Clint Kubiak, Nathan Steelhouse, and Davis Webb. He's the guy. Could be that.
We will see. And again, like, the thing that concerns me the most about Kingsbury is the flameouts. And that's essentially what happened in Washington. It happens a lot in some way, shape, or form in most of the stops he's at. And that is concerning, whether it be after a few years or during the second half of seasons. But yeah, I think it's interesting because, the other thing that she reported was that, Lamar is involved and these guys are involved in this process, which I think is awesome. I think that's really, really cool. We had heard from Steve Bisciotti. Now, again, she just kind of talked about how he's zooming in and in touch with the makers, the decision makers with what he likes and who he's liked. So I don't know if he now, for the second round of interviews, is at the facility, because these are like full day interviews. Steve Bisciotti made it clear, like, this is a full day thing when these people are going through these interviews. So again, I think it's cool Lamar's a part of this process. I'm also curious because Lamar, as we have talked about, Sam, has a very tight-knit group. His circle is very, very close. And, there's not a lot of info that comes out about Lamar about he likes this, or this is what happened, and this is Lamar's opinion, or this is what happened with Lamar, because that's how tight his circle is. And so with Diana, I do wonder, like, is this something that Lamar's camp wanted out there? Where did this information come from? And again, like, I'm not trying to like question it. Oh, what Diana, where'd she get this from? But I do think it's curious that this is coming out, because normally this doesn't happen with Lamar Jackson in terms of like, a lot of stuff comes from the Ravens, but normally not a lot of stuff comes from Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I don't think it came from the horse's mouth, if that's what you're asking. I'm not sure. I mean, again, I'd be shocked. Not to say that she doesn't have a way to finagle her way into that group, but I would be shocked if it was straight from Lamar Jackson that she heard that from. Most likely, the front office asked for input from Lamar. He told him, hey, I like this guy. He's got what it takes, and a lot of players agreed, and then she probably got the information that way. That's usually how it goes right now with Lamar. You're not going to get it straight from him. Lamar's not going to text you and say, hey, I really like Kingsbury. I'm telling you guys. So it's not like that, I don't think. But even without that, I think it is a good sign that Lamar is involved in these things. I know the snowstorm's coming, so I'm not sure if he's going to make it to Maryland for these, in-person interviews. I don't think he wants to get snowed in and stuck in Baltimore for too long when it's a lot better weather over there in Florida. But I will say that he is involved currently in, the interview process, and his input does hold meaning and does hold weight. And you'll know for sure if that holds weight if a guy like Kingsbury is the OC. And so I get the trepidation about him flaming out. I agree with you. But again, not a lot of options for OC out here. That's why I think it may be in the Ravens' best interest to do their due diligence with this head coach search.
What's that Todd Monken guy up to? Maybe maybe he could come in and do something with this offense. I don't know. It's possible. But yeah, I'm almost saying I'm talking myself into Shieldhouse is OC or Davis Webb. I feel like I'm taught, but I have to get over that hump of, all right, well, what did we see from Zach Gordy's last 2 years? Yeah. But I do think that, I'm not trying to, no disrespect to Zach Gore. I just think those two guys are probably more ready than Zach Gore was at that point. But there's been some buzz, Sam, around defensive options. Jesse Minter being the one that came into Baltimore for his in-person interview yesterday. And there was a lot of buzz about Minter. He's been a name that's been connected to Baltimore for a while. Obviously, Sam, with the connection, he coached in Baltimore for multiple seasons, and went to Michigan with Jim Harbaugh after a stint at Vanderbilt as their DC. Followed Jim to Los Angeles, and that Harbaugh connection, it is strong. And the Ravens, they might be trying to go with familiarity there. And I like Minter as an option. I'm curious about the staff surrounding him if he is hired, or Weaver, or another defensive-minded head coach or whatnot. But Josina Anderson reported late on Wednesday night that the interview concluded. I know some people were wondering if they were going to let him not leave the building or if they were going to hire him on Wednesday. Who knows if he's going somewhere else or if he just left the facility for the day and is coming back today. I don't know. I have no idea. But I think if he does end up leaving and the Ravens don't hire him outright, I think it does send a message that they might still be waiting on some of these guys in the playoffs, like a Kubiak or Shieldhouse or Webb, or obviously Joseph is involved in that conversation too. I think that is telling about, yes, the Ravens want to go through every single stone. They want to turn over every single stone, go through that process thoroughly. That's what the messaging was. I know some people were kind of like, oh, guys are starting to go off the board. Are they going to start to get a little panicky? And not panicky in a bad way in terms of like they hire a bad candidate, but just not go through the process and maybe wait for a guy that could be as good, if not better, of an option. So what's your take on the Minter situation and what they're feeling right now as this process continues?
Yeah, when the process started with Jesse Minter, I was of the notion at first, okay, he's going to come in for an interview, he's going to leave, and they're going to wait again, for the playoffs to resume and then move on from there. But after those hirings of Robert Saleh, Mike McDaniel moving on to LA, I started to think, maybe the Ravens might, maybe he might knock their socks off and they go ahead and make it official. So, I did some digging, and it seems as though the Ravens, at least as for now, I haven't really heard what the outcome of that interview was, but it looks like the Ravens are going to do their due diligence here. They're going to, wait and see what happens with these other coordinators and position coaches in the conference round in the postseason and go from there. They need to be, they need to do their due diligence. The Ravens have the fortunate role of being the most desired location of all of these, especially after the nonsense with the Buffalo Bills owner. It's the number one spot for these coaches. So the Ravens are going to do what they have to do. They're going to wait. If Jesse Minter decides, I'm going to go to Las Vegas because the Ravens can't make up their mind, well, see ya. It doesn't mean much to the Ravens because they're going to make sure that they get this right. They got it right with Brian Billick. They got it right with John Harbaugh, and they want to get it right with this next head coach. So they need to do their due diligence, and it's a good thing. It's a positive, and it sends a message across the league and to the fan base. We're going to do this the right way. We're going to do this our way. You guys pick up whoever you want to pick. If it's a guy we like, we lose guys in the draft every year. It won't do us anything with that. They need to get this right, and I think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah, it to me, like, yes, guys are coming off the board, both head coaching wise and offensive coordinator wise, just coordinator wise in general. But it's not time to panic right now. You still have a lot of good options on the board. As I've said, there are a lot of good combinations that the Ravens can put together. This process has picked up. And I think that, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but I'm sure teams are kind of like on edge. It's an on edge process of like who's going to be available for us at the end of the day once we go through everything. So I'm intrigued to see what happens. We're coming up in the final part of the show. We'll talk about some timelines for this Baltimore Ravens team with the head coaching search, as well as other things relating to the team, as well as just general updates. So stay tuned. A lot coming up on the show. First, the show is brought to you by Indeed. If you've ever hired someone who looked good on paper but wasn't the right fit, you know how important that is. When you want candidates who truly match what you're looking for, trust Indeed sponsored jobs. Hiring Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posted on other sites. Indeed sponsored jobs puts your post at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. If I needed to hire someone for this show, I'd go straight to Indeed and be very specific about what I need. Real experience, not just a resume buzzword. Instead of struggling to get your job post seen, Indeed sponsored jobs helps your listing stand out and reach quality candidates faster. Spend more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with less stress, less time, and more results using Indeed sponsored jobs. Listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help give your job the premium placement it deserves in Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL. Just go to Indeed.com/LockedOnNFL right now and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring, do it the right way with Indeed. And the show is brought to you by TurboTax. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax Full Service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, and get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in if a TurboTax expert didn't file for you last year. Just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher, Sam Njoku, still rocking out with you here on this Thursday, talking Ravens head coaching search, talking a lot of different Ravens content because there is a lot right now, and we're slowly creeping up on the start of free agency. About little under 2 months to go before that, and the Ravens, Sam, by that point, they will. I tell you, they'll have a head coach far before then as they build out their staff and, look to the future of this team. But to you, with everybody that is still available, the timeline does become pretty interesting. When would you start to get concerned for the Ravens not having a guy? Is it after a few more openings close up? Is it after a particular candidate gets hired and you're really down to like one guy or bust? Because right now I think they have options, but at some point, the longer that they wait, and I think it's okay that they're waiting. I think it's the right decision to go through this process right now. But at what point would you say, this thing kind of has to hurry on up?
If they don't have it done before the Super Bowl, I think that's where I'm at. So my leash is pretty long because I think there's so many interesting candidates, people that can come in and be leaders, people who have a pedigree of excellence behind them that can come in and get the job done. So especially now that, Jesse Minter, he has some buzz. There's a couple of teams that are after him, but I think everybody wants a chance to work with Lamar Jackson on the offensive side of the ball. So I'm willing to wait it out, make sure you get the right guy. Lots of intriguing prospects that we talked about here for sure. And another thing to note, if Steve Bisciotti had been a part of the first round interviews, and then we got to this round of interviews and Jesse Minter hadn't, inked the deal on the spot, then I would say, okay, well, maybe Jesse Minter's not the guy. But the fact that Steve Bisciotti wasn't involved in the first round of interviews, the fact that he is involved in this now tells me that Steve Bisciotti is leading this charge, making sure that he sees the guys that he's heard about from Eric DeCosta, Ozzie Newsome, and Sashi Brown about who they would like to be the head coach. I like the process. I want it to be as thorough as possible. Once the conference rounds are over, you're going to get guys to come in from those conference championship games to come in and interview. And after that's done, then I'll get concerned if there's like third round interviews. Okay, enough. We're not picking the president of the United States here. We're picking a new head coach. I know we think it's more important than that in this climate that we're in of football and sports, but let's find our guy. We know who the guy is. Let's pick him. But I'm going to give him a little grace. Give me until, not the Super Bowl. That's a little too much. The Pro Bowl. Give me until the Pro Bowl, the week after the conference championship. We need to have had a head coach inked to a contract, and let's get this ball rolling.
I do want to round this out with a appreciation segment, or I guess half a segment with you about Steve Bisciotti, because I think after witnessing the owner and GM meeting, or I guess the press conference with Buffalo yesterday, wow, could two interviews and press conferences be any more different? I do not think so. It was a lot of blaming on the coaching staff, blaming on players from ownership. And to me, again, like a lot of people were talking about how, hey, this Buffalo opening might be better than Baltimore's. I was never on that train personally, but a lot of it was like, okay, well, like Buffalo with all this, and they have Josh Allen and all this stuff. It's a mess right now. At least for Baltimore, it's more just like, okay, who's the coach going to be? There's not really a lot of drama with that. It's like, oh, cool, Lamar's involved. Cool, ownership is doing this. But Buffalo, the players aren't happy with the McDermott firing. Ownership is throwing coaches and players under the bus. The messaging was poor. They promoted the GM who did not deserve a promotion. It is a mess. If I'm a coaching candidate and I want stability, again, Buffalo still is a talented team, but I think Baltimore, and I've said this for the last couple of days, like Baltimore to me is still the most attractive opening. And I think that ownership press conference, if you haven't seen it, it is a disaster. I think that ownership press conference further cemented that and pushed Buffalo maybe even below Pittsburgh. That's a hot take, but even maybe below Pittsburgh on the list of stability openings.
Man, Buffalo Bills fans, my apologies. I was not familiar with your game. You guys are truly one of the most abysmal, at least run organizations. That was a disaster. I cannot believe it. Keon Coleman thrown on the bus. He's still on the team. He has 2 years left on his deal. So again, great. You're getting a new stadium. Whoop-de-doo. But who's the owner of that stadium? It's that guy who seems to not know anything about what it means to run an organization, let alone a football team here. So if I'm a head coach, no, thank you. I know Josh Allen's intriguing, but how long does he got? Like 6-7 years left after that? I'm stuck here with Mr. Owner here, and who knows what this guy is. I don't even know what to think of being. It's just a mess of an organization. If it wasn't for Josh Allen, this would be one of the worst teams you could possibly think of. But because of 17, obviously there is going to be some intrigue there. But to your point, yeah, it's Baltimore for sure. Maybe Pittsburgh number 2. Pittsburgh's only a quarterback away. Buffalo's the owner and GM away from being competent, in my opinion. So that's way worse. I 100% agree with you. It's not a hot take. The Bills organization would not be a destination. If I was a head coach with my pick of the litter, I'm not choosing Buffalo just because 17 knows how to run the football and throw it really far down the field. No, I'm going to pick an organization that gives me resources, that understands the game, that understands, the operational procedures of where I go to, where I report to, all of that. Seems like it's a mess over there in Buffalo. Not the case in Baltimore.
And that's one of the biggest draws, in my opinion, is the working structure that organization has in Baltimore. The fact that, and even with the way that it was with Harbaugh, like, everybody knew what was up and felt like, Harbaugh and ownership, Harbaugh and DeCosta, whatever. And all that felt like it was a well-oiled machine, where in Buffalo, I mean, it just feels like anything but that. So I think Baltimore, they won without even picking up their finger in terms of, getting their reputation over the Buffalo job. Because I think, again, the national conversation was, oh, Buffalo, look at this job, and over Baltimore. But now I think with that press conference, everyone's like, oh, hold on, let's pump the brakes on Buffalo a little bit there. But Sam, I appreciate you. Thanks so much for hopping on with me on the way out. Be sure to tell people where they can find you and what you're working on.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, on Ravens Talk Podcast, talking Ravens football all the time. I got a new episode coming out next week about the hiring. Hopefully, a head coach emerges for the Ravens. If it is, we'll talk all about it on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. You can also catch me on the Locked On Ravens Squad show with Kevin Q, talking Ravens football twice a week at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Monday and Wednesday. So look out for that.
Yeah, look, we've talked about all this stuff about, oh, the Ravens, they're going to take their time and they're going to go through, watch, they're going to hire like Minter today or something. And we're going to have it's just going to go completely against everything we've said because that's just how things work. It's how it works.
Literally.
But we're going to be here regardless. Of course, Sam Q and I on the Locked On Ravens Squad show. And be sure to check out all of Sam's links and work in the description down below. Sam, thank you again. And thank you to everybody who watched and listened to Locked On Ravens today. Coming up tomorrow, we will be rounding out the week with more daily Ravens coverage. Be sure to like and subscribe button in video form, follow along and subscribe in audio form, and see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.